think we just got that going. Alrighty. Well, thank you three for being here to listen to me story. For Dr. Stapp, I'm going through my third story, and this is, for all of you, going to be from Matthew 8. And so this is coming a little bit after the Sermon on the Mount. So there's 16 different events that we see in the life of Jesus actually following the Sermon on the Mount. And I've gone through the first two, and so this is going to be the third story that falls. And so the first two stories are really where there is Jesus going out and he's healing a servant of a rich ruler of the Roman Empire. And so that's the first story that we see. And the second story is we see Jesus who goes about and he's silencing the winds and the waves, and they're in a boat, and he just quiets the entire storm. So this third story comes right after that in sequence. And I'll go ahead and share that with you today. So I'll share that story. So when Jesus and the disciples had come to the other side of the sea, they were in the region of the Gadarenes. They ended up seeing two demon-possessed men that ultimately a lot of people were really avoiding. They were so violent and so loud that people were passing a different way. Interestingly, these two men shouted out to him, "Son of God, have you come here to torment us before the time?" You know, a long ways off, there was actually a herd of pigs that were in the distance. And the two demon-possessed men said to him, "If you drive us out, would you please send us into that herd of pigs?" They were begging him to do so. And Jesus responded, "Go." And when he had said this, the demon-possessed men entered into the pigs, and the pigs actually rushed down into the lake that they were just getting out of. So these pigs killed themselves. So the men then who were tending to the flock went into the town, went into the city, and told of this story, and told of what it was that had just happened. And so the entire region and some of the people in the towns came out to him and said, "Would you please leave? Would you please leave this region?" They begged him to do so. They begged Jesus to leave. Okay, so that's our story that I have for today. I just wanted to ask you guys a couple of questions as we kind of think about this. I'm sure that you guys are familiar with these verses as we sit here at church. So first of all, I guess, do you see, who are the characters that you see in this story? Do you see people that are coming off the pages? I know you don't have Bibles in front of you. I have mine.
Christ and the two demon-possessed men.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of the demons themselves feel like real characters.
Yeah.
Pigs.
Yeah.
Pigs? Yeah, there are pigs.
Maybe the whole town.
The town. Yeah, I think that they're an important character. I guess having heard this story probably before, just me telling it today, was there anything that surprised you? Was there anything that seemed a little bit unusual in this story?
It seems unusual that the demons would go into animals, because that's not something that typically happens in the Bible.
Yeah, I think that's very telling. That's something that was, pretty basic. Do you remember what it was that Jesus said to them? I mean, the response he gave was pretty short. It wasn't pretty. Yeah, it was just go. Yeah, that's all that we were told. He says go. I find it really interesting.
Also that they killed their hosts immediately. Like, usually you don't see that in demon-possession. It's usually a thing. Living in
living, in freedom.
It's also, I think, startling that the demons ask Jesus something and he agrees. He doesn't say, like, okay, like, you guys aren't that bad, so I'll do it. Like, we don't really know why he agrees, and he does it very curtly, but he grants their request, which is odd.
Yeah. Does anything seem unusual about the way that he kind of, I guess, as you said, odd, that he says, just go, but then what happens, like, I guess, immediately following that? Just maybe the violence of what happened with the pigs dying, throwing themselves into the sea, or even just his response alone, just such a curt response. I think is really interesting. think in a lot of ways it really speaks to the power of God, and it teaches us a lot, I think, about his nature in ways that we don't think of him working. Like it might be a very curt response, as you say, to a demon. But I think that there might even be things for us to obey here today. So I think that we see the sayings of Jesus, and we see what there is that is being taught. I think beyond that, that there is something for us today to obey within this lesson. Do you guys pick up on anything about that, or is there anything that really was drawn out to your attention as a story that heard many times, probably?
Maybe just that we should be more aware of the spiritual forces in the world.
Yeah.
Also that, this is maybe following rather than obeying an explicit command, but Jesus goes to the people that other people are avoiding.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I think it's amazing, too, that we see this picture of the response of the people and how they ask him to leave after he does this response as well. That he responds to the demons, and then the people, in many ways, reject him. I think that they're saying, we don't want to be a part of you. So, I think that for us, there's something to obey. I think that we can see that the teachings of Jesus are not always the easiest, as we see in this lesson. And it might just be a very simple response in some ways. That he says to go to the very thing that we think of as evil, as that being demons. But for us, as Christians here in 2018, I think that there is something that we can look at in a broader context and saying, you might call us to do something that's a little uncomfortable, and we might even have a response like these townspeople, more so than we'd like to admit. Well, thank you guys for bearing with me and listening to this story. If you'd like to, I will need willing participants later for additional stories.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you do it just to LeVar Burton and be like, tell us about another story, and then say, but you don't have to take my word for it.